We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey everybody, we are back. I'm your host, Castle. Straight across from me is Tim, aka Beaker. We've got Peaches, aka Brandy.
Woohoo, that's
that would
me.
be fine. And we got Deanna. And then I got Don, who's not
But
saying
still.
anything.
Hello.
He speaks.
What?
He's not silent at home.
So tonight we're going to talk about shadow people and black-eyed children. And having done some pre-show research, we discovered that Deanne did the pre-show research. And
The few little facts, if you want to call them that I found, were that these are children, they're pale. They're pale-skinned. They're usually between the ages of roughly 6 and 16. They're usually found in deserted areas, hitchhiking, sometimes on your doorstep, places like abandoned parking lots, quiet woodlands. They've mostly been seen in Texas and Oregon. And after reading what little I could find on them on the internet, I've decided that if they are a real thing and not just an urban legend, I'm going to call them type 3s. Because when you see a type 3, if you see a type 3, you can usually tell because something is wrong. And so I would think that in these children, the thing that's wrong is their eyes are wrong.
you know, it's interesting though, because there's really no reference to black-eyed children prior to 1996. And so, I mean, there's kind of a lot of different ways to look at it. My guess is that it was initially a fictional something that somebody made up, which somebody ran with. But at the same time, we know from experience that type 3s are often tend to try and be deceptive. And so it's something that some type 3 somewhere may have decided this is a good idea and ran with it.
Yeah, I think it's more along the lines of Slender Man, where someone was probably just looking for attention, so he just created this thing out of nothing, just so he could more or less become famous or get his 30 seconds of fame. Because,
Right.
I mean, like Deanne said, when you research it, there's not a whole lot. And with them being fairly recent as 1996, like 20 years, to me it just kind of seems like, you know, it is an urban legend. It was just, like I said, some guy that wanted his 30 seconds of fame, so he created these creatures out of his
Right.
own imagination.
You know, I've researched other things, and you can spend hours going from, this website and that website. And if you're a responsible internet person, you'll read up on 10, 12 different websites and then, try to pull together which information seems to be consistent everywhere and weed out the stuff that's someone's opinion. But there was literally one, and it was Wikipedia.
Well, I was going to say, I joke a little bit because I did spend a couple minutes researching. I didn't spend the time I would have liked to have researched these two topics. But I spent considerably more on shadow people because what I could find on black-eyed children was very limited as well. I mean, if you do go to Wikipedia and look at black-eyed children, it's one or two small paragraphs.
Yeah, it's not even very much. And there were a lot of websites of, here's our experience, here's our experience, here's our experience. And I read through a handful of them, but...
It's hard, though, because with the this is our experience things, a lot of that's really anecdotal. And granted, I guess people could say that about the paranormal as far as a lot of stuff that we've experienced. But the difference there is that I can take what I've experienced and I can go look up documentation, back 200 years of people experiencing pretty much the exact same thing. And so I think that's where it's a little bit different, where you got something as new as 1996 and you got 2 or 3 people saying this is my experience. It's a little bit harder to corroborate that, like you can other ghost encounters.
Right,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, from what we've experienced, I mean, if it is paranormal, if it is a spirit, it's very rare that you're going to find a spirit that's like walking around going door to door or hitchhiking.
Trick or treat!
Yeah, exactly. Like spirits, they usually find a place that they're comfortable with and they just kind of stay there. They don't really wander that much.
Well, I was going to say, in my experience, and Peaches can probably back this up, but a lot of spirits not only find a building they're comfortable in, but they even sometimes set up in a room or a closet or a corner. They don't move around a whole lot.
Yeah, spirits tend to be very territorial. So if they find something they like or a place that they like, that's where they stay. Kind of like Lucy in the basement.
Right, I have a new spirit that's cropped up in my basement the last year or so. His name's Jared, and he literally stands in a portal in my basement.
But now we have the wonderful things of technology. We have contacts that can black out your eye completely, the whites and everything. So a lot of people wear those and act creepy and
And that's true.
play on that
Vampire
whole
too.
black-eyed child thing. So
I don't think you have a lot of 6-year-olds running around with blackout contacts.
I know, but she said from 6 to 16.
This is true.
So teenagers will do that. That's
And granted, that alone could account for easily half a dozen accounts of I had black-eyed 16-year-olds knocking on my door on Halloween. Weird.
They kept coming and asking if they could have candy. I don't know what was going on.
What's interesting, though, is from another standpoint, though, Peaches described Lucy at the basement of the family tree.
okay. So for the most part, I mean, she can also like shapeshift or whatever, but her main image that she projects is a small, probably like 5-6-year-old little girl with long hair. It depends. And most of the time, it's like a pink dress. Sometimes it's a blue dress, and she's perfect in every way except for the fact that she has caverns where her eyes should be.
Which is consistent with type 3 spirits, is they can never
black
completely...
caverns where her eyes should be.
Yeah, they never can... What color's her hair, by the way?
It's almost... and people say it's blonde, or I guess tow-headed. It's almost white, but it still has that tint to
Okay,
it.
for some reason I always thought it was black.
So kind of like Children of the Corn. No, not Children of the Corn. Village of the Damned.
But type 3 spirits generally can't replicate a human appearance. There's always something wrong. And with Lucy, her eyes are black caverns. And so there is maybe some level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Authenticity.
Crossover.
To reports where, maybe someone has seen a spirit like Lucy that's got the black cavernous eyes.
Hitchhiking, though? Really?
Well, and that's where
I don't understand.
And
Or
that's
coming up to your front door. I mean,
And that's
it also
where-
did say that people think it might be vampires or extraterrestrials.
Hallucinations, maybe? I
That's
don't
probably
know.
the LSD.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's where I start getting into the okay.
Well, see, and
category.
that's really interesting because that's a good segue into the shadow people. After, if we want to come back to black-eyed kids.
Are we segueing?
We're segueing.
Let's
'cause
not
that's-
segue yet.
You're not ready to segue?
Wait, hold on. Okay, when you're ready, let me know, because I want to make fun of Chunga. I mean,
Well, no, we don't have to necessarily segue into shadow people, but under shadow people, that was one of the things. They said, imagination, ghosts, type 2s or type 3s, astral bodies, time travelers, interdimensional beings, and aliens. And so that could also go into the black-eyed kids as well.
And say ultimately, though, and I'd kind of be curious to see what a consensus is here around the table. I think one or two may be something like a Lucy, but I think probably for the most part there may be a prankster or something. I honestly think this is one of those
figment
kind
of someone's imagination that wanted just 30 seconds of fame.
I think it's a story someone wrote that kind of took off by itself, and it's one of those things where everybody says I've seen it so that they can.
It's like Slender
part-
Man, but not as popular.
Basically, yes. That's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion. Now, granted, if we're podcasting, the doorbell rings, and we go up and see black-eyed children, I may come down and change that via the middle of the podcast. But for now, I'm going to say hoax.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same train of thought there with you. If I see something that proves otherwise, then yeah, I'll believe it. I mean, it's we did an episode on succubus, and I'm like, yeah, they're not real. I don't believe in them. And then 3 weeks later, we actually had a case where we were dealing with one. So unless you can show me some definitive proof that these things actually exist, other than outside of it being like a type 3 like Lucy, I'm gonna go. It's just someone wanted to be somewhat famous, so he invented this thing so he could be on TV.
Yep, I'm completely on board. Other than, if someone, like we've said before, and I'm reiterating, unless it's a type 3 that's how they manifest their imperfection is through their black eyes, I call hoax.
Peaches, you're being so quiet.
Why?
I'm going to say I'd ask for Silent Don's opinion, but he's always quiet, so that's nothing new.
Yeah, I think it's BS.
Yeah, and and I kind of want to touch on what Tim just said, though, because Tim said something that's very profound, and I know I've said this before, but that is the healthy attitude, in my opinion, on a paranormal investigator, and to be honest with you, anybody in the planet. Don't discount something just because you don't want to believe it. Be open to, if you see evidence of something, to be willing to reevaluate your stance.
Right, and I think it's good that you can be skeptical about something, but still be open-minded enough that you know that you don't have all of the information.
And that's what I think is healthy, is skeptical. Like, logically, this doesn't work, but once you actually see it, go, okay, I've seen that. This succubus are real, kind of thing. So.
Well, and that was that when we were doing that case or starting to get involved, that was affecting all three of the mediums that we had on our team at the time.
Oh.
And as soon as we dropped the case, all the problems stopped.
I was going to say, it was having a lot of issues. We hadn't had issues like that with our mediums for a couple of years. In fact, we still have video of that. We won't release it for Peach's sake, but there's video of...
Thanks.
I've got video of Caden's kids' toys turning on and driving across the room by themselves.
Yeah, I say we had a lot of stuff going on till we basically had to announce to the open air that we are not investigating that case, and then it all closed right down, and all is well.
Now, shadow people, on the other hand, shadow people. Deanne?
Can we segue now?
Yeah, that was the segue. If you listen to Radio Ronin, that's how they segue.
Yeah, they've been doing that a lot lately.
Yeah, because it's funny every time they do it.
So Shadow People, this is the one that was really popularized by the Coast to Coast AM radio show. There we go. As far as modern beliefs.
Which, by the way, even though our Podbash logo is turn off your radios, if you're up late at night, that actually can be, not always, it depends on their topic, but that can actually be an interesting program to listen to.
So pretty much as I read that one, let me just tell you my thoughts on Shadow People. I can't really decide in my mind the difference between a shadow person and a spirit, because some of the spirits that I have seen, and that's not many, again, not a brandy, have been kind of shadowy. So I have a hard time distinguishing between seeing a ghost, don't see my air quotes, and seeing a shadow people. But it says it said a lot of them, like sleep paralysis, you may perceive a person experiencing a heightened sense of emotion, such as walking alone on a dark night, may perceive shadows as people, so some pareidolia going on there in some cases. It says meth addicts see shadow people after periods of sleep deprivation, and they actually interviewed one, and they said you don't ever see shadow dogs or shadow birds or shadow cars, you see shadow people. So I do think there is something to it.
You know, that's kind of actually interesting, and I actually read that too in my 5 minutes of research before we sat down to record. I'll fully admit that. I'm kind of the same line of thought as you are with regard to shadow people. The spirits that I've had the luxury, in fact the last one, which is at the family tree, I had the luxury of having Brandy there with me. And so she came in a few minutes later, and I was able to confirm that what I had seen was actually a spirit named Jonathan. And was able to actually talk to him through her. But when I saw him, it just looked like the silhouette of a dude rolling through the room. And initially I just thought it was one of our investigators, one of our guests, until I turned the light on a few minutes later and realized that where he walked to, there was nobody there, and no way for anybody to leave there. What I find really interesting though, and you guys may find this kind of interesting too, is that did say that a lot of times meth users who are experiencing a lot of sleep deprivation will start seeing shadow people. And it's been our experience that people who get heavily involved in drugs tend to pull in a lot more type 3 spirits. And so it wouldn't surprise me if, with those drugs on board and with that sleep deprivation, if they might not be more open to seeing the dark things that may be around them. Just a thought.
Right, now if you listen to us at all, you know that I've got a little girl spirit in my home, and when I see her, which is usually just little glimpses here and there, she is usually kind of gray and misty. At Castle's wedding, I saw a full body, and I'm going to call it a shadow people. It was a full body. It was someone walking. Tim was facing me, and I said, Tim, who is that? Who just walked in here? And he's like, there's nobody in here. And it walked out of a room that was locked, and it walked straight into a wall, and it was completely black. It was a black person-shaped.
Before you saw that too, you saw their shadow walking back and forth under
The door. Yeah, because I went to open the door and Tim's like, you better knock, and I think, didn't you see it too?
No,
The shadow?
I didn't see it. You asked what was in that room, and I said it's a locked office. 'Cause
That's Gregory, just so you know. He has a name.
Gregory, yeah, and the reason, and Tim's like, you better knock, and I actually did knock because it looked like there were people in there, and I thought, well, I don't want to walk in on someone that's changing their clothes and be like, oh, hey. But then I got down on the floor and looked under because there was a gap about an inch.
Dan doesn't want to walk in on someone changing their clothes, but by darn, she's going to peek through the hole in the door to see if they're in there changing.
I'd only see feet, but then the lady that was kind of in charge of the whole building came upstairs, and Tim asked her, what's in this room, and she says it's an office, it's locked all the time, and so it's like there's no way anyone could have. And where we were, we could have seen anybody that came.
Well, and we had just walked out of those rooms because there was down that little hallway. There was the locked room, and the two rooms that we were in, that big conference room, and then just that little side room. And we had just walked out of those rooms, so there was no one else up there. Everybody else was downstairs. We were the only ones on that area of the building at that time.
But it was completely black. It had a head, it had shoulders, it was walking, it had a gait. When you walk, people have different gaits when they walk. It had a gait, but it was just black as pitch.
Well, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that says that shadow people are basically, well, they could be aliens or interdimensional beings or spirits, or there's a litany of stuff that they could have supposedly been. But in my experience, every time I've actually seen a spirit, it's been essentially a shadow. At Fort Douglas, I saw a shadow person, for lack of a better word, cross across the doorway. I saw the one we just talked about at the family tree. I saw another one out of my peripheral vision at the family tree 6 months to a year ago.
And I'm going to interrupt you right there because it did say that most of the people who see shadow people usually see them out of the corner of their eyes and briefly. But it did say more commonly people are seeing them more straight on. And it said they're not sure if that's just because of the internet and more people can get out their story to more people, or if it's just because the frequency of shadow people is occurring more than it did in the past.
Well, and I am always, even for myself, really skeptical of things I see out of my periphery, because it's out of your periphery and it's oftentimes so quick that it's like,
You're even skeptical of a photo that we have that's clearly of an apparition, and Brandy has confirmed that it's real, but you're still skeptical of it.
I'm only like 5% skeptical. 5.3% skeptical of that particular photo.
Because that particular photo, that's almost a perfect example of a shadow person.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Is that the family tree one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's more of a white streak. Or gray streak.
But that's a gray outline of a person.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, another thing is that said a lot of people claim that their shadow people have red eyes.
I saw that some do and some don't.
What's interesting about that is when we were at the family tree with Bear River Paranormal, that's what they all reported seeing was red eyes down that hallway. And to me, I didn't actually see it, but it was just kind of popped in my head, the vision of what that particular spirit was doing when it came up on Shane was, it almost seemed like it was on its hands and knees, kind of slinking towards him. And then as soon as he said challenge accepted, it pounced. That's just kind of the vision that popped in my head. Whether or not that's what actually happened, I have no idea, but that's just kind of what it seemed like to me, what that spirit was doing at the time.
Well, it's interesting because I think all of us in this group, with the exception of maybe Silent Dawn, and he can correct me, have seen a spirit on one occasion or another. And would that be accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay. We need to change that.
Other than maybe when I was a really little kid.
We need to change that. But most of them do manifest as shadow people. My personal opinion is I think they're spirits. I just think that's the way they're perceived as shadow people.
Okay, so for you, all of you, they're shadow people. They're not all shadow people to me. The shadow people that I have seen are all spirits that don't have enough energy to put off a full body appearance, or they're fears that are manifested and are manifested into shadows and shapes that people see out of their peripheral or straight on.
Yeah, touching on that too a little bit, our minds are programmed to make sense out of things. They'll make faces out of random patterns. They'll
Pareidolia.
make
Pareidolia,
yeah. I mean that's part of the way people's minds are made, and so we may be making things out of patterns and things that may be a bit more random, and we make them there. That's not to say there wasn't something there, but
Yeah,
that's something to look at.
A lot of times, like when most investigations, you have like a dozen or more people in the dark, right? So when people are like, well, look for shadow people, look for the darker than dark. Well, most time, people have a natural, I don't want to say fear, but their senses are different in the dark. So a lot of times they'll manifest either their fears or their curiousness, and it'll manifest into something that they see across their peripherals. That's why most of the time they're seen in their peripherals, because it's a manifest coming out of the side of them.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to come back to what you see here in a minute, Peaches. But Silent Dawn, who's surprisingly not very silent in this episode.
Hey, he wasn't
is
either on the
awesome.
Winchester episode.
That's true. But,
We might have to give him a different nickname. We'll
Yeah.
just call him Don.
Don,
Weird.
Don speaks lightly.
I told you he's not silent. He really isn't.
But I was going to say, we actually had a picture posted up on the WISP website. It's been a couple months ago now. It ended up being a log. But it
Oh, yeah.
it was posted as a, hey, this might be a Sasquatch, and there's quite the debate going on.
I don't know why there was a debate in the first place, because Sasquatch is not real.
To your knowledge.
To your knowledge, Tim, to your knowledge. No, but the interesting thing about that, though, when I first saw the photo, my thought was, it's probably like a log or something, and then I didn't really think much of it. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know what it is. And there's some people saying, oh, it's a hunter, or it's a guy in a costume.
I thought it was a hunter.
Ultimately, though, I want to say it was 2 or 3 days later, maybe even a week later, someone had gone back to that exact spot and posted a picture, and it was just a great big freaking log, that, like a tree stump that looked like a dude walking, looked like two arms swinging, and so yeah, so there is that pareidolia effect. But I do want to go back to what you're saying, Peaches. My opinion is that shadow people are just the way I and many others perceive spirits, is basically black silhouettes. Have you, in your wanderings, seen a shadow person that you can't explain what it is?
Yes.
Tell us more.
Okay, so a few of the shadow people at
Whispering for the recording.
the off-Broadway theater
Mm-hmm.
up in the balcony, there were quite a few peripheral shadow people that I couldn't really explain. There's one behind a woman who was saying that something was pulling her hair, but it wasn't touching her at all. I mean, it was like a good 10 feet away from her.
Was I with you when this happened?
Yes.
I think I was sitting right next to you because I remember her.
Yeah, she was freaking out, and I'm like, nothing's touching you. I mean, there's shadows and stuff going around, but there was one particular shadow person, and I just couldn't quite. It had energy, but there was no real shape to it. It was just a big mass, and I have no clue of what it was, or if it was male or female or anything like that.
Now let me ask you this, and I'm just kind of playing the devil's advocate here. Could it have been a regular spirit that just for whatever reason you couldn't see because it might have been on a different
Possibly.
frequency, for lack of a better term?
That could have been.
Tim's looking at me like I got a third eye growing out of the middle of my forehead.
No, I was just thinking maybe it's possibly an elemental, because they don't really hold a shape.
Maybe it was the spirit of a Sasquatch.
No, you can't. It's not. They're not real.
To your knowledge.
You look like a Sasquatch, and you're real.
No, I look like a lumberjack.
If we did a beard comb over from the chin up towards his forehead.
You're
Totally.
tall. You've got a lot of facial hair.
See, my dad had a theory. We were supposed to be talking about shadow people and black-eyed children, but my dad had a theory on Sasquatch.
Well, let's talk Sasquatch for a
Yeah,
minute.
I guess we're talking about Sasquatch now. He had an interesting theory that someone had told him, or I don't know where he heard it from, but it was ancient like Native American tribe of just like these giant Native Americans that would wear like fur and stuff like that to keep themselves warm, because they didn't really have the type of clothing that we have now. So I mean, it would look like a large animal type thing because they're wearing fur, and it's just a giant race of like Native Americans.
Here's my theory on Sasquatch.
Which at that point it would mean Sasquatch isn't really real if it's just
True.
Native Americans.
Now, here's my theory on Sasquatch, and take it for what it's worth, and I'm going to delve into the religious theory here for just a minute. As I put Peaches to sleep.
We're gonna get some hate mail. Sasquatch is too real.
I know, we're gonna have some Sasquatch hunter demand to be on the show.
Screw you, cryptozoologists.
Now, cryptozoologists and those, I am not going to pretend to have any expertise in
We
this
love you, Ben.
at all. I really don't. But according to Scripture, Cain was cursed to walk the earth until the end of the world. And who's to say that other people might not have been cursed to walk the earth until the end of the world? And so if those people were wandering around for thousands of years, getting all gross and dirty and hairy, that would account for sightings of, using my air quotations here, Sasquatch.
You didn't use air quotations.
Yeah,
But why would they look like they're 10 feet tall? I mean, people were shorter back then than they are now.
according to the Bible, Methuselah lived for 900 years, and they don't do that now, so they may have been taller way back when.
There are some
They're
things
the-
about
they're the-
giants that were walking the
Like
earth
David
too.
and Goliath.
Goliath.
Remember David
They're
and
the
Goliath?
Dunedain.
But regardless, what I'm saying is that would account for the fact that you're not finding Sasquatch bones or huge societies of Sasquatch
Because
because
they
you,
live in the forest where no one goes.
People that camp. People that
that
hunt.
but you'd still think you'd see bones. But anyway, that's my theory. I have no doctrinal backing for any of it, but that would account for it if it was real.
See, and that's
there's-
where I am at too.
There's certain things that I don't necessarily believe in, but again, if you show me definitive proof that these things exist, I lean more towards aliens existing than I do Sasquatch or El Chupacabra or some of those other things.
Okay, here's my thing. So
We totally got off topic.
I know we did right.
here's this. So you believe in Jesus, right? Have you seen Jesus?
Oh, she's going for the jugular, man.
Heavy hitter.
Have you seen any miracles happen? Have you witnessed anything that proves
I
that
used
Jesus
to
is
date
real?
you. Isn't that a miracle?
Boy, he makes a great case.
Jeez.
We got Brandy, who's cute, and we got Tim, who, if he did a beard comb over from his chin to his forehead, would look like a Sasquatch.
But that's where he's going. He says he does. If you can
we're
show
in-
definitive proof that
we're-
it exists,
We're in water to wine territory right there.
then he will be like, yeah. So I want to know if he's
Well-
seen Jesus. Has it been proven that Jesus exists? It's called blind faith.
I think Tim
No,
has.
he was written about in the Bible.
I think Tim has
But who
stated
wrote
a couple of times that
You know, it could be fake. It could be a work of mythology. I don't know.
And you like Greek mythology, right?
Well, I like all sorts of mythology: Greek, Norse, Japanese, Egyptian.
We've totally gone off.
Mythology for a reason.
We've totally gone off the set list, but this is actually kind of interesting. Keep discussing.
Well, I mean,
Ha!
well,
I got you.
Oh, no, you didn't, because thousands of years ago, people believed in Zeus and Hera and Ares and Apollo and Aphrodite and all sorts of gods and goddesses that, you know, now we can explain the things that they supposedly did through science. So, you know, who's to say that God or Jesus does exist?
And
I'm
you're
gonna skid over
LDS.
before I get zapped by the lightning. No, Tim,
I'm just playing devil's advocate right now.
in your
I mean,
defense, I think that Tim has said not
I mean,
only
she has a valid point. That no one alive has seen them or heard of them. Like I've seen more ghosts than I have times that I've seen Jesus. So, you know, who's to say that they do or don't exist? It's like Schrodinger's cat right now. It's just like at this time until it's proven. Well, I guess you could say the same thing with extraterrestrial, Sasquatch, El Chupacabra, and everything. It's they're all Schrodinger's cats. They do and don't exist at the same time.
This is fascinating listening to you guys talk about this. You know, ultimately, I think a lot of us have preconceived notions of what things are supposed to be, what ghosts are supposed to be, I mean, you can even get into the religious aspect, what Jesus is supposed to look like. Is he white? Is he black? doesn't
Well,
matter.
he was born in the Middle East, so he's probably Middle Eastern.
But the point I'm getting to is that I think ultimately, and I think all of us at this table can agree that when we've seen something, our expectations change once we realize what it is we're seeing. I suspect that, like science, if you go back to the early 1900s and some of their ideas, or even the 1800s or 1700s, I can't remember when it was, when they used to believe that flies were just formed out of rotting meat, that's where flies came from. And obviously science has since proven that flies lay eggs.
Should we go to the story of how the Minotaur was created?
We certainly probably can. We've got the
I'm
time.
not going to.
But regardless, bacteria and stuff like that, Civil War, people were dying of infections because they didn't understand how infection and bacteria and all that kind of stuff worked. And I suspect that science is going to prove that some of the stuff that we believe right now is absolutely retarded. Oh, I'm not supposed to use that word. Dang it.
Well, I got talked
know.
over twice
Sorry.
on this, and so I'm going to get it out there because it's driving me nuts, and it's probably driving some of our listeners nuts. But in Tim's defense, as far as the Sasquatch, as he said not only on this podcast, but he said it several times before, Tim's pretty open-minded. And if evidence comes out that there are Sasquatch, you would reassess some of your evaluations and
Yeah, I would. Totally.
and embrace it. But until
I mean, if
that
you can
happens,
show me definitive proof, like that picture, like Cass was talking about, that was posted on our Facebook page, where it ended up just being a giant log. Some people swore up and down, yeah, it's a Sasquatch, and I thought it was a hunter. But I mean, unless you can show me like actual proof of, stand me right in front of a Sasquatch. And I get it, and I'm sure some people are probably frustrated with what I'm saying right now, but I've dealt with people in the paranormal where they straight up say ghosts don't exist, and I won't believe it unless you show me right in front of me without any cameras or any trickery that they actually exist. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with those things, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, I know I've said earlier in the show that they don't exist, but I honestly do believe that there's the possibility that all of these things exist. I mean, we don't know. There's so much that we don't know when it comes to the paranormal world, even cryptozoology or UFOs or any of that stuff. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, look at our own Earth. I mean, when we got the ocean, there's so many different species of animals that are probably undiscovered still. Even on land in like jungles and South America, they're finding new species of like frogs and spiders and all sorts of shit all the time.
Well, there were some that they thought were extinct, and one washed up on a shore in Japan. The Coelacanth, is that the right one?
Yeah, I think they discovered that
Fishing.
a while ago, but it was one that they thought was extinct for a long time. But it was probably 30, 40 years ago. They caught one fishing. Yeah.
But as of right now, I don't necessarily think they do exist, but I do think there is a possibility that they could exist.
Well, and that's kind of the crux of it. And I mean, that comes down to black-eyed children, shadow people, etc. I mean, to be honest with you, when it comes to paranormal stuff, the one area that I'm most skeptical of is photographs.
Orbs.
I've seen photographs that I know are legit and I believe to be legit, but I've seen so many that are fake, just flat out blatantly faked. I've seen some that are just, I periodically, and if you sent me these, bless your heart, I love you still, but people send me these photographs of like black with like some bright thing zigzagging through it, and like, I found a ghost, and it's like, I don't even know what this is of. It's just black with a zigzaggy, and I can't put any kind of frame of reference to this photo whatsoever. And
I had someone send us a photo that they got from a friend. It's funny because like people that send me photos, it's never a photo that they've taken. It's a friend of mine took this photo and sent it to me.
A friend of a friend.
So we actually had one where, and I showed this to Peaches, where it was like the mirror was fogged up, but in the mirror it was like a perfect silhouette of a man that had like a 1920s style like mustache, and I just first look at that before I even ask Peaches, I'm just like, yeah, this is not real. Like, what are the odds that your mirror's gonna fog over in the perfect shape of a person?
FYI, all the pictures that you send us eventually get to my eyes. So.
And to be honest with you, on most of the photos, I usually have to have Brandy's seal of approval. On the ones that I see that I'm like, that could be legit, I still won't even sign off on it until I've had her look at it. And to be honest with you, most that I get are so blatantly faked. You're not going to get a photo that's crystal clear of a person. Yeah,
I
I've
was
never
actually-
seen a real ghost photo that's crystal clear.
I actually got bored last night and watched your Anatomy of a Fake.
That's a fun video, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the music. The music is what keeps it entertaining.
Well, I intentionally chose dorky music because it was a really bad fake. If you ever are interested in looking at a fake photo and how those get taken apart, by all means, go on YouTube and look up, I think it's Wisp Media is our username.
Yes.
And Anatomy of a Fake. It was a picture that somebody sent me.
Well, it's also on our website, wis.org. You go to the media section under videos.
That's right. I was gonna say, but they sent it to me. It was a picture that their friend had taken of this lady in black.
Like I said, it's a friend sent me this picture. Can you look at
Of a
it?
friend, of a lady in black by these bicycles. And as you're looking at this photo, interestingly enough, it's out of proportion with the bikes according to where it's supposed to be. She's wearing clothes from the 1800s. She's floating like, what, a foot off the ground?
And she had the gimp hands.
Yeah.
Her hands look like, in regards to how big the bike was, her hands look like they should have. It's a full-grown woman that had like hands of a baby.
Anyway,
It must have been Donald Trump.
interestingly enough, or Deadpool.
Oh yeah, Deadpool would have.
Interestingly enough, I Googled Lady in Black and found the exact photo that they had used. Somebody had photoshopped it in there. They had basically inverted it and put it in this video. But the person who sent me the video, they got in contact with their friend, and their friend was adamant that this was absolutely real. And they were going to sue me for making this video, and they're going to sue Wisps, and they're going to sue my cousins and my uncles and Tim and Deanne, and everybody was going to get sued who had
They
anything
would
to do
have
with this
made like
video.
$10.
Well, and I told them, I said, I'd be more concerned about getting sued by Sony for using their Lady in Black photo to make this fake.
But I mean, this all could tie into, again, our topic, the shadow children and shadow people and black-eyed children. It's just, at first glance, because, you know, like Don talked about the pareidolia, where your eyes want to make sense of things. So at first glance, it could look like it's legitimately it's a spirit in the photo.
and ultimately, when it comes to reports,
Especially when you have some suggestion that that's what it is.
Yeah, when someone says, "Hey, look at this ghost I've got in a picture," I mean that's a perfect example of kind of like what we're talking about tonight.
well, and again, that's one of the reasons I'm so skeptical about photos is just because half the time it's just a either unrecognizable blob or it's just, I don't know what it is. You know, if you give me a photo that's purely black with like a little zigzaggy bright yellow something with no frame of reference, that could be anything. That could be.
I love the Facebook group that I'm a part of. That's
There's a black-eyed child.
it sure is.
Peaches is looking up stuff on
So
her
I have to
phone.
post that on the Facebook page. But I see all the time on one of these paranormal groups that I'm in where people are posting pictures of
Can't tell if that black-eyed
orbs
child's a
or
man
just like
child or a
light
female
streaks,
child.
and they assume everything is paranormal. It's like, you know, you could accidentally move your camera slightly while you're taking a picture, and, you know, if I have it pointed or if I'm getting light from a light source, it could look like end up causing a light streak across my screen, and you think it's paranormal. And it's
Well,
just-
even a blur. I mean, you blur your camera because you're moving it too fast and take the photo. I've seen people show me these blurry photos of nothing. It's a ghost. No, it's just a blurry ass photo. It's not a ghost at all.
See, I trust video a little bit more, but at the same time, it's just, I mean, if I don't have the right lighting in my video, it could be the same thing where I think I see something, but it might not necessarily be anything.
But I'd make the same argument for video though too, because there's video that's like orbs that you see an orb that's moving in an unnatural way that's clearly not an insect, versus some of these videos you see on YouTube where somebody's got the fishing line and their camera happens to be pointed right at the spot where the cupboard opens and it happens to pan right over to the next spot where. So
Yeah.
those
Right.
videos that are clearly faked. So
Or like when they're driving down the road and they happen to turn their camera right at the right time to follow the spirit that's walking across the street.
right, and so it's those videos. And it's just like photos. It's the same thing that you got to take all that into consideration.
Right. Why is this photo, video, whatever being taken in the first place? You know, what's the context around that? Like you say, you don't just walk around with your video camera out the window and go, oh my gosh, look, there's a Sasquatch or a
Right.
ghost or a whatever. That being said, I know Deanne's got some photographs in an old house that she lived in years and years and years ago that had some very strange streaks and orbs, and a clear picture with a streak or an orb.
And I keep meaning to bring those to podcasts so Brandy can look at them, but I forget.
But that there are things that are somewhat unexplained.
I mean, if you've got a camera that's set up on a tripod and you've got like one of those remote control buttons that takes the picture and you're getting that shit in there, then I might believe it a little bit more then. But I mean, people tend to move. They don't hold still when they're taking pictures. And like I said, if you hit that light source in the right way, and you're going to get a streak across your screen.
That's one thing that we always tell people when it comes to like ghost photography. If you're out trying to take pictures of ghosts, on an investigation, take 2 or 3 pictures of the exact same thing, because that becomes pretty easy to debunk weird shadows, weird light sources. If you take 2 or 3 pictures right in a row, it also makes it easier to pick out anomalies. And if you do it enough, you can start kind of figuring out what certain light anomalies look like versus, unexplained stuff that may or may not be a spirit in the photograph.
Or the video that you tested my knowledge with the very first time I met you.
Exactly, and that's an interesting video. And the interesting thing about that particular video is it was sent to me, and it was being sent to me as it was happening. So they would basically record something, they'd hurry and send it to me. But basically, the kid set up a laptop on his kitchen table and just recorded his whole kitchen because he had stuff going on. What was interesting, and this is the first time I ever met Peaches, is I'd never publicly posted this video. And it shows cupboards opening up in this house. It shows pans being tossed out. It shows
the smoke detector fell off the wall and the blinds fell off the wall.
Right, but the interesting thing is I had Brandy follow it with her finger, and she followed it through the video to where the stuff happened before it happened, and she'd never seen this video.
We'd never even met you before. We were talking to Asylum 49.
I know.
And you're just like, hey, look at this video I've got. And we're just like, who the hell are you?
Who's that handsome guy?
I wasn't holding a mirror.
But yeah, and that was kind of what sold me, because people often, sorry, I'm totally going way off topic here, but people always ask me.
I don't think we have a topic anymore.
We don't. We're just rambling. But people often ask me, well, how do you know that working with these mediums that they're legit? And for me, that's one of the first things with Peaches that was like, okay, she's legit, because she could tell me where stuff was going to happen in this video before it happened. What
was going to happen in the video too? You've obviously seen the video when she's
I've seen it 100 times, and
she'd
never seen it.
And her and I was standing right there too, and I was kind of blown away because I didn't know that she was that gifted at the time. When she's like, yeah, now it's reaching for the smoke detector, and the smoke detector falls off the wall, and you and I were both just standing there like, the hell is she doing this?
Yeah, that's one of those, hey, you want to be on my team?
I was already on the team, but, at that point he was like, I still have to ask so-and-so if it's okay. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was kind of one of those, you, come with me.
Are you guys going to the investigation tonight? Yeah.
Which one?
You're on my team.
That's pretty much how that rolled out. And then the rest is history. So, our consensus thus far, as we've rambled through this show.
Shadow people real.
Shadow people real, misidentified spirits for the most part, possibly some other things.
Could be type 3s.
Could
be pareidolia.
Black-eyed children.
Urban legend.
Not a thing.
Negative.
Unless it's some weird 16-year-old with the contacts.
Sasquatch.
Or Lucy.
Or Lucy.
Could be technically
misidentified
black-eyed children.
So, Sasquatch.
It's possible.
It's possible, but probably not a thing. Well, let's be honest. Probably not a thing. What else did we talk about? The Loch Ness Monster?
No, that was proven to be a fake, actually. The guy that took the picture, I've researched this one, actually. The guy that took that picture, that famous picture of the Loch Ness Monster, actually, apparently on his deathbed, went into detail on how he actually faked that picture, and it was just a toy submarine or something that he bought from a store and set it up to make it look like it was a monster.
Which picture?
The famous one.
Famous one?
Which picture? The famous one.
There's like the head up and the little hump and the water.
The one that was taken in like the 60s or whatever.
Okay.
I've been to Loch Ness.
Like the first one ever.
The picture.
That may be one. We need to find us a cryptozoologist to have on the show as a guest. That'd be interesting to talk about some of their cryptozoology things. Anyway,
so I can debate them on everything.
so what else did we talk about? We talked about fake photographs and fake evidence.
Extraterrestrials,
We touched on extraterrestrials.
a little bit.
That was last show.
Even mentioned interdimensional beings.
We did mention
Time travelers. That's another. We
Another.
did that.
We
That
missed
did
that
come
one.
up.
Astro projection.
We talked with Micah at the Paranormal Festival or the Expo, and that was our whole episode with him, was talking about time travel.
Time travelers and the interdimensional beings were actually mentioned in the Shadow People things, and a little bit in the Black-Eyed Children and the
I don't know,
Wikipedia.
there's supposedly a bunch of photos out there that show time travelers, and I would like to believe that that's possible, but
You know what I find interesting about some of those pictures, because
They
I
could
looked
be
up some
Photoshopped, too.
tonight, is a lot of them are very, very grainy, and I'm thinking, wow, so in the future our photo technology just kind of goes down the toilet?
Well, I've seen some of those that were taken like in the 60s, and some guys got
sunglasses,
sunglasses that
like
are...
Ray-Bans that haven't been invented yet.
Yeah, but at the same token,
It's because he was time traveling.
well, I was going to say, some of those, it's like, how do I know there wasn't just some weird dude wearing a costume that happens to resemble modern day clothes? You know what I mean? I know. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show.
Yeah, it is.
So we're going to cut the show just a hair short. We're about where we usually end off. But we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we promise our next show won't be quite as rambling, but hopefully it was fun. I know I had fun.
You know what's
talking
funny
about
is I
stuff.
think these episodes where we
Ramble?
sort of have a topic and then just go off on a tangent, I think these are the episodes that people have reached out to us and say, hey, these are the ones I love the most.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're absolutely right, because we get a lot of feedback on episodes, and these ones seem to be... it's funny, because we walk, as a podcasting crew, we walk away from these shows and go, what a steaming pantload of crap that show was. And then we usually got a lot of messages, that show was awesome, do a sequel.
I'm sure there's probably some people that are going to listen to this episode and be like, that Tim doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And I probably don't.
Well, some of the stuff, I'll be honest with you, none of us know what we're talking about.
Talking out our ass.
We know about
Pretty much. But we're just trying to make it entertaining and somewhat educational.
and talk on topics that may be of interest. You know, on some of these, like Black-Eyed Children and Shadow People, really, at some future point, we'll find an appropriate guest who may come in and have a ton of knowledge on it, and we'll bring those on. But sometimes we just like to bring the topic on and just kick it around and just...
Basically,
Play with it.
today was an opinion show. This is our opinions on these particular things that we've talked about. So we could be wrong, we could be right. We don't know. This is just our opinions. None of this
we're
is-
probably right, because we're awesome.
Yeah, probably, but I don't want to say that anything that we talked about today is fact. This is the way it is, and this is the way it's always going to be, and it will never change, and I am not a crook.
Are we endorsing fact or faked?
Well, welcome, Richard Nixon. It's a little holdover from Ben Hansen on our last show. Not Richard Nixon, the fact or fake part. Oh, I had a whole train of thought that I just totally, completely lost.
Say it.
As it happens when you get old.
I know, it's an old thing. So we're going to wrap that up for an episode.
We need to talk about our opinions on the Winchester Mansion
Oh, the movie?
movie that we all went and watched, all 20 of us.
Do we want to talk about this on this show, or do we want to save it for the next
Yeah,
show?
we could do it right now.
Let's do it right
It's
now.
not going
Why
to take that much time. Now that we're done with the show and we've...
Hey, we just came up with a topic.
It was rolling through my mind the entire show, and I just didn't say anything.
So the movie, and I'll just give you guys my opinion, and then everybody can kind of toss in with their opinion. The movie is based on the Winchester House, which is a real place. We've talked about it before in the show. It was under construction for, I think, 20 some odd years continuously.
Where'd that? No, it was 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's about 20
30
years.
A long time, anyway.
A very long time under continuous 24-hour construction. The movie's based on that premise, and then from there they went total full fiction. But
Well, there was the earthquake of 1906.
right,
That
which they
brought a
tied
lot
in.
of the stories. I think it was 7 stories at that point, and then it fell down to 4.
But ultimately, it wasn't like the most awesome movie ever, but it was pretty good for what it was.
I mean, it was a PG-13 movie, so I wasn't expecting to be like amazing by any means, but for being a PG-13 horror film, it was...
I felt like I got my money's worth. I didn't walk out feeling like I'd been screwed over. I had some questions. I kind of wonder why some of the spirits were sealed in the rooms, because they were too ornery, went back into the rooms after it was all resolved.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
That was kind of
But
weird.
I mean, they did kind of stay. They followed some of the things that actually happened in the mansion, where they did things in 13s, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, they stuck with the general theme of the mansion, but the story itself was fictional.
I had kind of hoped for kind of a biography movie of, we don't know exactly what happened, but based on the things we do know, this is kind of how we think it played out. And like you said, it was not that; it was more of a fiction, but it was enjoyable.
But it was their way of like trying to describe like it was possible that it wasn't the 1906 earthquake that tore the house down; that it was actually this spirit activity that was going on in the house at the time that caused the house to fall apart.
I thought there were some interesting premises around it of a fictional reason of why she built the different rooms and the different thing. I mean, I thought the story as a story was pretty good that way. There were things like the rooms being sealed with the board with the 13 nails, and then all of a sudden, if you've sealed a room, then why all of a sudden do they just unseal by themselves? So there were some things that didn't hold together for me, but there's really so little information about that other than that the medium told her to go do this, and the facts of the things. I mean, the picture that they showed at the end of the movie is the only picture that they have of Sarah Winchester. She was just a total recluse, and there was just no, very, very little information about what was going on. They kind of touched on the seances a little bit, that she'd go up and the bell ringing at 12 o'clock and, some of the weird things that other people could observe. And I thought they did a pretty good job of pulling those elements in, but there's not a lot of information. And so I think, to make a movie, you've got to go into fictional and make your suppositions and do the things. And as a movie, I quite enjoyed it. As a documentary, it was like, it's not a documentary.
No, it was just kind of like the Annabelle movie, where they don't know where the doll actually came from, other than the girl's mom bought it at a store one day. So with the whole Annabelle story, where they just tried to, this is the directors or the writers, whatever, opinion on how the doll came about, or
they're making some entertainment.
Yeah, it's the same with the Winchester movie. Like, I mean, it's like you said, there's not a lot known about the mansion and what actually went on there at the time. So, yeah, I mean, I thought the story writing was pretty good in my opinion, but I'm not a movie critic, Kenny.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that was, I think a lot of it was actual shot. I've been to the Winchester Mystery House a long time ago, and I recognized rooms and areas. Now, some of it had to be recreated as sets, so that they could do something.
They're not going to let them board up stuff in the actual house,
right? And bang, and take a hatchet to the floor where that stairway is. But I've been to that stairway that leads up to nowhere, and so you look at it, you go, okay, so they've recreated this as a set so that they could have these shots. But
well, with Hollywood the way it is now, I mean, they could recreate stuff that make it look exactly like it is. I think all the outside shots, like the pan-over shots of the house, I think those were actual shots of the house.
With mats. They'd done mats because you had to do the area around, it's, a big major street out front of it now. So you've got to take it back in time to the, 1906 and the things. And the tall tower that they showed in the movie that you talked about, that it was like 7 stories or 6 stories, something like that. Some of the things that came down, and they're not that way now. But it's...
I thought it was a good movie.
I did too.
I enjoyed it. I won't buy it,
was
but
fun.
I wouldn't mind seeing it again.
I'd probably buy it
entertaining.
just because I'm a collector of movies.
My favorite part was that little boy.
That kid singing.
The kid singing.
Yeah, that was creepy.
That was
shit.
my favorite part.
I don't know if I remember that part.
Oh,
Dude,
he's
he was
singing
singing for,
Beautiful
like,
Dreamer?
Towards the end.
Like,
oh, okay.
He's just sitting there in the room, like all hell's breaking loose, and he's just sitting there. Beautiful dream.
Oh, that's right. I
In
remember
the
that
kind of a
Coming
vibrato.
for me.
It was the vibrato.
And then he
that
was
made
singing it
creepy.
like the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I remember that now. All right. Well, we're going to call that a show. Everybody have a good night.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network, found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.